Well, on behalf of the Sweetwater Union High School team, I just wanted to briefly introduce the team that will be presenting and those joining us from Sweetwater Union High School District. We have Dr. Daniel Winters, our Executive Director of Research. We have Ms. Maria Esther Lizárraga, our Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction. We have Ms. Sonia Picos, Director of Student Services. We have Dr. Joe Fulcher, Assistant Superintendent of Equity, Culture, and Student Support. And we have Ms. Jania Quirk, Director of Planning and Construction and Facilities. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Winters.
Thank you and good morning, everyone. The first slide we want to discuss is some data related to COVID, and it's data that we're real familiar with in the South Bay. And what these charts show you, it's actually data from a couple of weeks ago, a snapshot of the COVID cases across the zip codes in the Sweetwater School District. And what you see in the bar graph is that those zip codes in Sweetwater have a lot more cases than other areas throughout the county. And for example, the San Ysidro zip code, this is the number of cases per 10,000 residents at the time we took this data, that being 154. And we kind of show it in two different ways. The other way we show it is how many people per individual. So you have like a 1 in 65 chance of getting COVID at that time in San Ysidro, whereas you compare that to other areas of the county like Scripps Ranch, where it was 1 in nearly 1,500. So that data has really informed our decision-making process from the beginning. In particular, the fact that we did announce, I think, first in the county, we would go to distance learning was because of the fact that we knew that even though county averages are a certain number in the South County, those numbers are much more concerning. And so that has informed and will continue to inform our decisions as we go from distance learning eventually to in-person learning. On the next slide, we kind of talk about the many ways we've sought input to inform our plan. We've done several surveys, both of families and of staff members, to determine their level of comfort for the choices we're making. And we've seen that data be very consistent in our district and across the county, that the majority of folks are comfortable with distance learning at this time. There is a smaller percentage that have been interested in some sort of hybrid approach. And every time we've surveyed, there's been a very small percentage that are willing and interested in in-person learning right away. Of course, we won't move to that until the county metrics and the South County metrics are met to make that a viable option. Beyond the surveying of families, we also have engaged our families in live YouTube sessions, one case where we had over 1,000 people. And so that plus the committee work in our district, we want to emphasize that our approach is a collaborative approach as we move forward to make decisions in the best interest of our families.
Hello, everyone. Teaching and learning had to transform the face-to-face instruction this springtime to a virtual instruction in a very short period of time. We were able to achieve this by bringing together our very own teacher experts. Our teacher experts created resources to deliver instruction virtually. Sweetwater Union High School District has started distance learning on August 3rd. We have focused our beginning lessons on social emotional learning and looking at those essential learnings by content. It is not perfect, but as we go, we are adjusting our lessons and instruction. There were lessons learned from distance learning in the spring, looking at having our working groups look at how to keep students accountable for their learning. Our student teams wanted to see students and engage with them in their learning. So therefore, developing requirements for students to attend daily lessons. Students now are earning grades and meeting teacher expectations. Working groups also looked at platforms where they reviewed the multiple platforms used during the spring and narrowed the focus on Jupyter Grades and as a grading platform and Google as a learning management system. Content was personalized. Content was personalized through the development of a lesson focusing on a hybrid model of asynchronous and synchronous instruction. We also determined that the importance of acknowledging and the workload, both for teachers and students, really focused on being flexible and responsive to students' needs. The daily schedule was developed to ensure that students had daily interactions with teachers. SB 95 and the guidance from the California Department of Education clearly stated that teachers and students had interactions were a necessary component of distance learning for the first year. In collaboration with our Sweetwater Association, we established that minimum of students' roles. And by having students attend daily synchronous lessons, having an opportunity for students to work independently and reach out to teachers during asynchronous time, connect with teachers for questions during office hours, complete work, and make questions and roadblocks known to teachers. We also had 2 schools that have an 8-period schedule, a few schools of 0 to 7th periods option secondary functions as a quarter system, and Palomar High School has 10 periods, and we have some alternative programs.
So of course, in order for all of this to work smoothly, everyone kind of needs to do their part. So for our teachers, you know, we are requiring that they engage with students in daily video classes for 45 minutes out of their 90-minute block. The remaining time is for students to work on additional activities to provide office hours for that necessary one-on-one support. We have students who need to do their part in attending class. We cannot stress enough the importance of attending daily classes. We have systems of monitoring that and ensuring that our students are engaging and that they're completing their work, that they reach out to their teachers or to other school staff for any clarification that may be needed, and obviously that we provide time also for them to interact with their classmates. As far as our parents, critical role to the extent possible. Yes, we know that having a space and those conditions for learning are important, that we have a schedule set in place, and that they are that students and parents allow and support our students to have access to the different online resources.
The main thing is
very critical as well is that we have updated contact information, because that communication between school district and home becomes even more critical during this time. So we do have a few options available to our students. Currently, all students are participating in a distance learning model where students will continue in a distance learning model. For us, it's now until our winter break, which is that first week of October. We have learning centers. We have 3 currently that serve our students who may be experiencing some credit deficiency. We have our alternative programs like Independent Study, Option Secondary, and Palomar, who have specific supports and services meeting those specific needs of students. And we have Launch Academy, a new online program that Dr. Winters is going to share a little bit more about.
Yeah, thank you. So Launch Academy has been a program really years in the making, as we have considered a way to provide this option to our families who have chosen to leave Sweetwater for online options. This is an extension, actually at this point it's a pilot program as an extension of independent study in Sweetwater. Students have an option to take the APEX curriculum and really work out their education through this independent study offering in this new school year.
So we know that during this time, we have been very dependent on our technology, and our IT department has been incredible in ensuring that all of our students have devices and have internet connectivity. All the devices are being sanitized, and they are being provided to students in plastic bags. Our devices, most of our students kept their devices from last year, but nevertheless, our incoming students and our incoming 7th and 9th grade students were all distributed devices. And also, and very importantly, is the connectivity to the internet. We're very fortunate to work with great partners such as Cox, T-Mobile, Sprint, to offer these opportunities for our families.
Over in facilities and operations, we have multiple departments that are preparing and continuing their work around current services and also towards the reopening. So currently we have nutrition services. We, as of the first week of school, are servicing all of our students, Sweetwater students, for nutrition services. We do have several federal and state waivers that support that process and do provide for some autonomy in terms of meal development. We have, over the summer, pre-COVID and the return to school, been under the federal waiver, which allows for us to do universal service to families within the community. At this time, that waiver is not in place, which leads us back to just servicing our families. Transportation, while we don't have a lot of buses moving right now, they are actively preparing and getting ready for servicing our students as we return to campus in a socially distanced manner, with safe and healthy guidelines that they need to follow. There's school district parameters, and there's also very specific stuff for transportation as well. And then just in general, in terms of operations, the district has assembled a PPE committee, and it's comprised of purchasing, maintenance, and some facility folks. And we are doing all of the PPE procurement and sanitization equipment procurement for the district and distributing that as well. And we're monitoring that as we continue to move towards a return to school, return to campus date. Next slide is our local conditions. The district continues to stay actively engaged with this. We actually have our safety person, John, and he attends all of the county health and SDCOE presentations every week and gets the most current information. So we're tracking all of the activities that's happening on the local level, and then how that aligns with us returning to school, and to ensure that we're going to be in a place to have all of our services ready to go to support our students and staff. Moving into non-negotiables is what we call them at the district office. We have 3 areas that we as a collective team use as our guidelines in terms of making decisions on how we're going to continue to proceed. And so one is doing information-driven decision-making, that we are providing equitable services for students and staff throughout the district, and that we're following state and local guidelines. And just in this last few weeks, we have assembled a COVID action team that will meet weekly in relation to the previous slide as well. And we'll be assessing any new guidelines, parameters from the state, from County Office of Education, et cetera, and then bringing forward recommendations to the district leadership in terms of framing our decision making and action moving forward as we continue to assess where we stand today and how we're going to continue to proceed with our students and staff and our community moving forward. And then in terms of our health and safety plan, which is the genesis of why we're here, the premise why we're here, we have a very comprehensive health and safety plan that the district has put together, and it's combined with the teaching and learning side of the house. And so there's the 3 main elements that we're focused on, and that's providing social distance on campuses, and that is in the classroom and outside of the classroom, making sure that everybody's using their face coverings accordingly, because we're really focusing on everything we can do from below the ceiling down to help maintain safe and healthy practices inside classroom spaces or office spaces and outside as well. And that we have in place cleaning and sanitization protocols for students and staff, and for our campuses and for our district offices as well. The distribution of PPE to staff so they can support our students and staff needs. Even while we're doing distance learning, we do still have some service that we need to provide to students and staff as they get settled for the school year. And then also really emphasizing those hygiene protocols. And then probably most important as we're starting to onboard more folks onto staff, onto sites, is are detecting and responding to potential and confirmed COVID cases. And so there's self-reporting mechanisms, there's mechanisms in place that all staff has to screen when they come onto property at this point. And then also we've established protocols for what to do if you have an assumed close proximity to somebody with COVID, and also for those confirmed cases of COVID, and then how that crosses over and interfaces with site communication to human resources, et cetera. And so all of that is detailed within our health and safety plan, in addition to other areas as well. And then this last one is just a quick visual example of what social distancing would look like in a classroom. A standard 960 square foot classroom, on average, we would be able to, in a socially distanced classroom, support about 9 students on average in a classroom if you were operating off of a traditional 960 square foot classroom.
Athletics and our student athletes is a very important component of our high school and middle school programs. We have athletic programs at both of our levels. And currently, the California Interscholastic Federation, the governing body for high school sports in California, has scheduled sports to begin practicing in competitions in mid-December. So we have a little bit of time, a few months now, where as was mentioned before, as we watch the protocols from the county, as we see if San Diego County will get off the watch list and have the ability to open our physical campuses, we will also be looking at how to bring our sports and participation in sports back. And so all of the sports that are typically played and our student athletes participate in throughout the year will occur. It's just that they will, instead of the 3 seasons, the fall, the winter, and the spring season, there'll just be 2 seasons with all the sports being played, and each sport will have a full season from that mid-December point to approximately mid-June. It's going to be daunting and challenging to offer all those sports and use of our facilities and such, but what we are looking at is to open up our facilities in a phased-in approach, and again, monitoring the conditions around the county to ensure that we're doing so in a safe and methodical manner. So as we had talked about before, Sweetwater Union High School District is one of the first districts in the county, really one of the first districts in the state to begin. We started on August 3rd, and we did begin in the abundance of caution in a distance learning mode, providing devices and connectivity to the highest degree possible to our students and families. And as we transition to in-person instruction, we will be doing so in phases, again, as conditions allow, as conditions from the state, county, the state public health department, conditions from the county health and human services, and then our very, very local conditions around our schools. As those are considered, we'll be looking at a phased-in approach where we could allow access to approximately 10% of our students, which we are currently discussing. These are high need students, perhaps students with IEPs and others, all the way until we are at a place where the conditions allow for our families to come and have 100% of our students back, or they can choose to remain in our virtual programs that we are currently having set up. So our next steps, and really this has been an ongoing process, and it really began in March when our schools abruptly closed because of the COVID-19 global pandemic. But through that whole entire process, we've been meeting with stakeholder groups and drafting and revising plans, using the latest health and safety guidance, training our staff. And now in August, on August 3rd, we've opened, and we are attempting with as much flexibility as possible, but we have to recognize that we're opening our school year, the classes count, We are taking attendance. Assignments for our students need to be completed and turned in. And we are closely monitoring all of these factors to ensure and make sure that our students have the most access to success as possible.
And in conclusion, I think it's important to state a couple of things that I hope we can all agree upon. And one of those is that it would be in everybody's preference to be in-person education. However, taking into account the reality of this pandemic, our foremost priority is health and safety of all of our stakeholders, our students, our staff, and our community. And as you've seen, the numbers in our community, in our communities that we serve are extremely high, probably the highest in the entire county. Secondly, we understand it's a time of high anxiety, it's a time of high uncertainty. And so we're asking for all of our stakeholders to work with us, collaborate with us, at the same time acknowledging that there are things that are unknown and or they keep changing, such as the guidance and directives that come from health authorities at the state and county levels. Those are constantly evolving and we evolve along with them. We are making a call for all of our stakeholders to work with us, exercising patience and flexibility. We are responding to circumstances. At the same time, all of our stakeholders and communities are responding to circumstances. This is not easy work. Nobody has ever opened in a pandemic environment before. And so I think it's important for us to acknowledge the historic and unprecedented times we're working through. We understand it's not easy. We understand it's not like flipping the switch and the light comes on. This takes a lot of work that has to be collaborated upon with multiple stakeholders. There's a lot of considerations that we are taking into account as we move forward. As has been stated, but it bears being repeated, that we will be in distance learning through all our fall break. And our fall break goes through it begins October 2nd. We will be making determinations about the method of instruction on September 21st. That is our first check-in date. And so, again, one of the things we want to avoid is giving whiplash to our community, because we could potentially open at that time. And then if the health orders or circumstances or cases change, one of the things we're trying to, again, prepare for, anticipate, and avoid is having a sense of whiplash where we would open and then the state or county would then tell us to close. And it would create an even higher amount of uncertainty throughout our community. So again, I'm calling for our community to work with us, to exercise patience and understanding as well as flexibility. And that is what we are trying to work through as well, is using those approaches, because we understand that this is a difficult place for our students, for our teachers, for our support staff, for our parents, for our community, for employees, for vendors. There's just a lot of people who interact with the school district, and we're working collaboratively. We're also working diligently, but this is fairly uncertain and unprecedented. And again, when I can't remember a time when we've opened school under such circumstances. So I want to express my appreciation to Dr. Weber for having organized this town hall, this workshop, and to all the participants for the great questions, as easy or difficult as they may be. We're here as public servants to provide answers to the best degree that we can, given the circumstances we're all working through in this pandemic. So with that, thank you. And Denise, I believe you're going to be asking questions, or I'll cede the floor. Thank you, Denise. And thank you to everybody.
Okay, so these are some of the questions that were previously sent over. They may or may not pertain to your district, but I figured that this would be a good opportunity. This first question is, how will teachers be flexible with students whose parents are working during the day at home and may not be able to help them during live instruction times?
Okay, that's a great question. I'll ask Maria Esther Lizárraga, our Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction, to go through what our school schedule looks like and how that can allow for that some flexibility. Maria Esther.
Thank you, Dr. Aguirre. Yes, because our schedule is a 90-minute period, 45 minutes of that period are for synchronous and asynchronous times. So if teachers are flexible and can provide opportunities to provide students with asynchronous work, that meaning not being there the whole time, but students can access the teacher by asking questions, asking for providing during their office hours. Students can attend and get help as they need it. Teachers can also provide some tutoring at the same time. So there is opportunities for students to receive help during this time.
And then can you speak a little bit about the schedule from a day perspective? So certain days are going to have periods 1, 3, 5, and then 2, 4, 6. And then are there office hours for support?
Sure. So every day, teachers and students meet 3 times a day. We have 3 periods. And during the class time, they have the 45 minutes synchronous time and the 45 minutes asynchronous. So during that time, they can access the teacher for support. Teachers also offer office hours, and each teacher informs the students and administration when that happens. It could be before school or after school, or depending on the needs of the teacher. But their teachers are offering office hours on Fridays. Fridays, students are asked to check in, but not necessarily synchronously. And during that time, teachers are available throughout the day to assist students.
Thank you.
Okay. Will the school district extend its support for CBOs to work directly with low-income Latinx, African American, Asian Pacific Islander students with distant learning?
We have been working with a number of our community groups, so I'll ask Dr. Moore to review and provide a summary of the work we've been doing with some of our community stakeholders. And then if maybe Ms. Picos can add about distance learning and how that can look like working with our community groups from a student services perspective. So, Dr. Moore?
Thank you, Dr. Aguirre. Yeah, in fact, in these last 3 to 4 weeks, we have met with an African American student group. We have a community group called Black Minds Matter. We also held a town hall for our Asian Pacific Islander and Filipino community that was translated in Tagalog for that particular community, and where we reviewed the presentation that we just conducted and provided as much information and hotlines regarding how to get a computer, what times our school starts, and so forth. And so we're really, again, as Dr. Aguirre pointed out, in this unprecedented time, really looking at specific avenues to connect to our specific communities. In looking forward, we are working with our Teachers Association to develop a plan where we have a team of educators on every campus focused on the metrics of our African American students. It's in response to the Black Lives Matter resolution that was passed by the Sweetwater board about a month ago. And so in that time, and as schools have opened, we've identified teams of teachers and administrators that will be reviewing data for our African American students and ensuring that those students have access to the most rigorous courses, as well as the supports that they need to be successful. It's a multi-pronged approach. It involves lots of stakeholders, and we're very proud to begin that work and in many cases continue the work that has been ongoing. Just one last piece is one of the instructional components that we are really looking forward to is we have a pilot course at a couple of our sites for ethnic studies, and we're looking to build that pilot course and make it available through this year to our other campuses, so that we can have a discernible ethnic studies sequence of courses for our students to have, and so that is just one of the pieces of the things that we're working on to connect with our diverse communities.
Thank you.
And I would add, oh, sorry.
Oh, no,
I
go
could
ahead.
just add, if I could just add to that portion that since all of this work with the pandemic began, having an equity, culture, and student services department, we have been very intentional in taking a look at the needs of our diverse student groups. We know that the data shows that a lot of our students, our Latinx, our African American families have been hit a lot harder with the pandemic and are experiencing it differently. And we're very mindful of that. And we're very pleased to see that the county's continuity to learning plan is very specific and asking districts, what is it that we're going to do to mitigate, the supports. So we're working closely with the county office as well, and absolutely echo everything that Dr. Moore just mentioned. So that's all I would add.
So this next question may not fully pertain to you. It's asking about a third option outside of personal instruction. From my understanding, I believe your district is doing fully online. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The second part of this is asking about AP classes. Are there appropriate AP classes being offered for your online program?
So I'll ask Ms. Lizarraga or Dr. Winters to take that question.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Aguirre. Yes, we are offering all of AP courses online at this point in time. All of our resources are online for AP courses. So our students do have access to all of them. And also each teacher is providing, again, their office hours for that extended period of time to help AP students.
Thank you. This is another good question. Are there any averages for screen time per day? I believe I heard that the classes were 90 minutes a day and 3 times a day. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
So we recommend 30 minutes to 30 to 45 minutes of synchronous time. But that doesn't mean that the student has to be on the whole time, because teachers, depending on what this teacher is offering in terms of the instruction, that could be that maybe within those 30 to 45 minutes, the teacher is asking to complete a question, and students can, the teacher poses a question, then the students can work independently and come back and share their responses. So it's an interaction process of learning.
So these were all the schools that we had participating today. I wanted to thank you guys all for participating. I believe we might have 1 or 2 more questions in the chat room, I believe I saw. Let me just go back. There's a question about Launch Academy, saying it's a little bit misleading to say that we can choose Launch Academy when it is a lottery.
Yeah, I'd be glad to jump in on that one. And I did chat back with that parent privately. So we did have a lottery. We had quite a bit of interest. However, we didn't fill the spots, as some folks mentioned. they didn't have the classes that they needed, or other reasons chose not to be in there. So there are spots available. Just to add to the question about AP though, the Launch Academy, if it was referring to that program, has some limitations with AP classes because we have a small number of teachers. So we can offer other AP classes through Launch, but they would be more closely associated to independent study as opposed to a class supported course. So anyone who's interested, I will reach out to them personally and hook them up with our counselor to talk about whether that might be a good option for their child.
Okay. And then one more question. Why are other districts able to give parents the option to select on-site versus district learning? So the question is, why does Sweetwater decide to do fully online and not give the option of on-site?
Right. So thank you, Denise. As I mentioned earlier, I think there were multiple things that went into that particular decision and multiple considerations. One of which, at the time of making the decision, if you looked at the infection rates and rates of transmission, we had the highest rates in the entire county. This pandemic has particularly hit communities of color particularly hard, and that's generally speaking who our community is made up of. And so we were very cognizant of that the decision was not easy. We were also very cognizant that our community has a lot of essential workers and first responders. And so with that and taking into consideration and working towards with safety in mind and the health of our employees and students and community members, that's why we went with that decision. We did include check-in points throughout the semester. So that's why we include that September 21st check-in to make a decision about after the time we come back after the fall break. And again, these are not easy decisions, but taking into account the entirety of the circumstances, that's how we came across about that decision.
Okay, and I just happen to get one more question that happens to be one of your students in your district, and he is asking about how is the district dealing with the budget crisis.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things with the budget that I think are important. One was the pre-existing budget challenges, and on those we're working with the County Office of Education. They now have the ability to, they assigned a fiscal advisor who we work closely with on matters related to the budget. In addition to those issues or problems that we have in addition, the pandemic has added a financial stress to every district. So now we are dealing with that as well. How we're dealing with that is, I think there's multiple prongs to that. For example, we have a sale of property that we did recently, about 2 or 3 months ago, that should help us mitigate some of the financial impact. We are working to be diligent about how we allocate resources, particularly there were some federal and state resources. Those have been primarily going to support students in terms of devices, to support students by training teachers, and going to support students by us acquiring PPE, those things that when we do come back into session we will need. So making good decisions in terms of how we expend, looking to downsize of the district office where we can. As an example, we had one of our assistant superintendents who retired of human resources, and that position was downgraded. We still need somebody in charge of human resources. That's a reality of any organization. But those are the types of examples that I can provide of decisions that we're making to be mindful of our budget situation.
Well, I just want to thank you all for being here today and sharing with us. I will remind everybody that we did record this session, and it will be sent to our DCO staff in Sacramento so it can be shared for those parents that were not able to get online. I see a few of the other rooms have already wrapped up. I really want to thank you for spending extra time and answering all these questions.
Thank you, Denise. We appreciate the opportunity to be here and to be able to communicate directly with our stakeholders. We appreciate it.
Thank you.